1. Hey everyone. I recently remembered something that happened to me when I was 15 years old. Back then, I was a very shy, introverted kid. Therefore, I spent hours home on my laptop after school. I had a very limited number of people I used to hang out with, and we didn't plan something together that often. So I was looking for friends online via chat rooms or Facebook or whatever. In one of those chat rooms, I met a girl who was a year younger than me, and we instantly clicked. We used to send private messages to each other pretty regularly, and at one point, after our first talk, we exchanged phone numbers. From there on, our conversations began to be more frequent. We connected real well, and we talked via text or called each other a lot. At the time, I never noticed anything odd. We got along so well that after a while, we even discussed having a relationship. Up until then, we had never met, because despite living in the same city, our houses were pretty far away, since this is a big city. Anyways, after some time, we decided to meet in person, and so we arranged a time and place to finally see each other for the first time. We planned to go out the upcoming Saturday to a cafe near her house. Long story short, Saturday comes and I took the bus to where we had planned to meet up. While I was riding the bus, she sent me a text saying that she changed her mind and now wanted me to come to her house. Now, bear in mind that I was a naive kid who wasn't street smart at all back then, and I was feeling desperate to have a girlfriend since most of my peers had one. The point is, I wasn't a teenager who could think that anything bad was going to happen to me. So I accepted, and when I got off the bus, I started walking towards her house. I had a detailed map of my city at home, and I took a look at it before I left my home, so I kinda knew what road to take in order to reach her house. However, while I was walking, I couldn't help but notice that I was going through some narrow alleys, which were poorly lit. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but when I reached her street, I started feeling some weird vibes. I now know that was my intuition telling me to leave immediately, but as I said, I was a teenager who was excited about the idea of having a girlfriend. Anyways, while I was looking for the numbers on the building trying to find hers, I noticed two tall guys standing in front of a building, which turned out to be the building the girl had told me she lived in. The two men were wearing jeans and had their hoodies up, so it was hard to see their faces. While I was closing in, they noticed me and started staring me down. When I got close enough to them, they called me over and told me this. "Hey, you're here for Alice?" I instantly froze and looked at them. Not knowing what to say, I muttered, "Yeah, how do you know?" Stupid, I know, but I wasn't the best in dealing with panicking and fear at that age. They replied something that made me so frightened I almost couldn't breathe. Their reply was something like this. "She's not here, but we can make it up to you. How about you let us get you to her? We can take you to where she is." At the time, my fear turned into pure adrenaline, and I started running as fast as I could in the direction I came from. They chased me, but fortunately I was fit and managed to outrun them. When I finally reached a busy street nearby, I stopped to catch my breath and saw that they weren't following me anymore. I then saw them in the distance making inappropriate gestures to me and shouting, but they couldn't come to me and step out of the alley they were on due to the many people in the street I was at. After a couple of minutes, they turned around and left, and I was left there thinking about what just happened and how lucky I was. In the end, I took the bus home, and meanwhile I received a text from that girl's phone number saying, "You got lucky." I didn't know if I could block the number from my phone back then, so I deleted it immediately. Fortunately, I didn't hear anything else from her ever again. At 25 now, I of course know that whenever I have a date with a girl, I should always arrange it in a public place, with many people nearby. And that's my advice to everyone. I'm thankful that I got away from a potentially bad situation, and I truly hope that nobody will get to experience anything horrible happening to them. So to that girl and those two guys that chased me, let's never meet. 2. I'm still trying to fathom everything myself, so bear with me. It all started when Mark rummaged through my things when I was at work one day. Mark was my roommate. I lived in his house. He found my sage, I was raised Wiccan, and used it to clear the house of bad energy, which would have been fine had he asked me. A while later, when I was home, he was erratic and highly upset because there was something else in the house. My discomfort started when Mark called me when I was headed back home from work the night of the incident. He said we needed to talk when I got home, but wouldn't tell me what about. When I got there, he met me at my car and said one of my books had to go. The book in question is a children's scary storybook I've had since I was little. I said I could put it in my car, but I wasn't throwing it out because it's my book. He refused to let me enter the house first, told me he was about to seem like a madman, and then proceeded to walk about the front 2 rooms screaming, "Only creatures of God are allowed here," or something of that nature. What he bellowed was the most aggressive, terrifying yells I've ever heard from a man. At that point, I was afraid enough to unsheath my knife and hold it in my pocket. Mark beat me to my room, Andrew, his best friend, right behind me. Mark rifled through my top books and revealed the scary storybook and the book of Norwegian folktales I got at Disney years prior. He picked it up and declared that the scary book was it. He said the book was opening a portal for demons or something like that. He then told Andrew they had to call Madre, their spiritual leader, and I asked if they could do that outside my room. I closed and locked the door, and fed my lizard to try and calm myself down. They had her on speakerphone right outside my door, and I could hear everything. She told them the book was leather with white writing. None of my books are leather. She was doing a cold reading and pulling all that out her ass. They told her there were 2 with a white cover, the one with the molded faces, and the one with a lady on it. She told them to get rid of both of them. Those are my books, my personal property. Madre asked if they had supplies. Andrew confirmed it as he was holding a bag of something and a candle. Madre then told them to not tell me what they had to do in my room. That's when I had enough and texted my mom. This is what I texted her. Mark is religious but more spiritual. There's this lady that he and his friends hail as their spiritual leader, Madre. He's got insane ideals and views of the universe. He feels Wicca is evil, as are readings and tarot cards. Madre called him and said that they have to get rid of my 2 books. They brought candles and Madre said on the phone not to let me know what they need to do in my room. Madre commands their beliefs and forbids certain behaviors from Mark, such as buying antiques. My mom called the police. At the time, and still now, she feels that they were going to burn my children's books and then do something to me. I begged her several times not to, but she did anyway. In her defense, she thought I was going to be hurt by 2 men she didn't know. A policeman showed up. I was still in my room, and Andrew told him I wasn't there, so the cop left. A second time, a policeman arrived again, was told I wasn't there and left. Later on, I heard Andrew exclaim, "We're being swatted!" There were cop cars surrounding the house. The third time, it was 3 officers who demanded to know where I was. I exited the room, knife still in my pocket, out of fear, which they took. The cops said they were going to question me outside, but they didn't and kept me with Mark and Andrew. I was shaking and crying, but the cops took my saying we were fine as truth and headed out. That's when my dad showed up. The police, my dad, and I were outside. I told my dad the story, and the cops stayed to listen. The police then told me I needed to grab what was important because they didn't feel I would be safe there, and my dad agreed. I didn't want the cops to come. I just wanted my mom's advice as to what to do in a situation that made me extremely uncomfortable and unsafe. I felt physically unsafe as well as having a concern that Mark was going through my personal belongings, prepared to destroy some of them. Their religious beliefs would be fine if they didn't involve me. I'm now moved into my grandmother's house. 3. Hey everyone. So I'm a guy from the UK. I live in a town in Wales, albeit not the little villages most people imagine. My town is a popular holiday destination along the coast of Wales. This isn't overly relevant to the story, but I just thought I would give everyone some context. So it started when I was around 15 years old, so about 8 years ago. I was dating a girl from about 2 towns over. I would usually get the train to hers and back. However, this one night her family weren't supposed to be home, and we were kind of being watched by her brother, who was about 19 or 20 and was pretty chill. So the plan was to stay the night. We were up late playing on the Wii, but her parents unexpectedly came home. I never got along with her mother, and the whole thing got kind of heated, and I was kicked out of the house and told I couldn't stay over. It was about 2 a.m., and I didn't want to call my own parents in worry of waking them up. My mother is a very strict woman, so I began the long trudge home. It was roughly an hour and a quarter worth of walking, so I was expecting to be home by around 3:30. So I walked along the weird concrete bit just above the beach. Not sure what it's called, and I stopped after half an hour of walking, as there is a public toilet which is kind of run down, but also open 24 hours, and I was desperate. I was expecting it to be empty or just have a homeless dude sleeping in it, but I was wrong. There was a guy using the urinal. This guy looked to be about his mid to late 50s, a little on the overweight side, but not extremely. He had greasy, messy-ish hair, but other than that, he looked pretty normal. He definitely didn't look homeless. I remember he made a quick joke about something, but I don't remember what. I politely laughed, did my business, and left. After about another 15 minutes of walking, the weather had gotten pretty bad. It started to rain heavy, and the wind was picking up. I seem to remember this was around November time, so it was pretty cold. Anyway, so I'm walking, and a car drives by, beeps, and pulls over just in front of me. I had assumed it was someone I know, but couldn't think who. Got to the car, and the dude from the toilet was inside. He asked me where I was headed, and I told him. He said that was a long walk, and I couldn't be expected to walk all that way in this weather, and he offered me a lift. In hindsight, I probably should have refused. But the weather was bad, and at the time, he wasn't giving off any weird vibes. The drive took about 15 minutes, I think, maybe 20. The more I was in the car with him, the more I started to get vibes that there was something off about this guy. He was telling me his best friend was a 14-year-old lad who stays over at his place a lot, and they drink together, and if I ever wanted to join, I was welcome to. He was asking me some really invasive questions as well. I don't fully remember what they were. I just remember it's not the kind of questions you ask someone that you're giving a simple lift home to. Anyways, we got to the street around the corner from my place, and I asked him to just drop me off there. I told him my house wasn't accessible by road, and that I would walk the rest of the way. He gave me his number and told me to ring him when I got back to my house safely, as he wanted to make sure I got home okay. I asked him what his name was, as at this point he knew my full name, and he just said, "Pete." I said, "Pete what?" "My phone wants a surname." He wouldn't tell me, just kept saying, "Just call me Pete." I later found out that Pete was a fake name too. Anyway, I got into my house and texted him just to let him know I was home safe. Probably a bad decision, but back then I was full of bad decisions, to be honest. The next day came, and I was expecting everything to go back to normal. It didn't, because I stupidly gave Pete my number when I texted him. I started to get texts from him every morning, basically just saying good morning to me and wishing me well. I replied to the first few, and then started ignoring them. He then started trying to ring me, every single evening. I would ignore most of his calls, but he would often repeatedly ring until I answered. He was sending me these texts inviting me over to his house for some drinks. He kept telling me he'd just gotten himself a pool table and wanted me to come and play it with him. He was telling me a story of a friend he was playing pool with, the 14-year-old I was talking about, and accidentally let slip that the guy called him John. I collared him about this and said, "I thought your name was Pete." He said, "Oh no, my friend's name is John." I said, "You just said your friend called you John, and you told me your friend was called Tom." He said, "Oh well, some people call me John. It's like a nickname. But his name's John too." He hesitated saying this, and I kind of clicked that he was telling me a bunch of lies. I kept refusing, but he kept asking. After a while, my mum wanted to know who this dude who kept texting me and ringing me was. I told her, and she rang him herself from her phone and told him that if he carried on texting and ringing me, she would be calling the police. I didn't get any more texts from him after that. But it didn't end there. I had a routine, you see, and he knew it. I always walked my dog at 4:30 every afternoon, and played with her for 40 minutes on the field at the end of my street, just near where he had dropped me off. I started to notice his car pulling up there within 5 minutes of me getting there with my dog. He had tinted windows, but I would always notice the car lights were always left on, and the engine was always running. Also, I recognized his car. I would occasionally notice the car door open and a large flash from that direction as if someone was taking pictures. I started changing the time I walked my dog, but he would eventually figure it out and start showing up either earlier or late to coincide with when I was walking her. This went on for months, and I never mentioned it to anyone, but one day it just stopped. He stopped pulling up at the side of the field. I never saw his car anymore. No text messages or phone calls from him. It all just stopped. I ended up getting a new phone after a year and a half that I had for another 2 years. I dug out my old phone when I was around 18 or 19 after the aforementioned dog died. I had some old pictures and videos of her on that phone and wanted to transfer them over to my PC so that I always had them. I had turned on a phone which had been turned off for several years now and still had the old SIM in it. That's when I got my final message from Pete. It was an odd one, and was about 14 months old. It said something along the lines of, "Hi, I know we haven't spoken in a while, but I just thought you should know that over New Year's I was diagnosed with an illness, and I've been told that I don't have long left to live. You were a good friend in the short time we knew each other." He sent me his address, and I would really appreciate it if you would come around, just so I can have a last chat with you. I've got some beers in, and if it gets too late, you can stay the night. Just drop me a phone call when you want to come around, so that I can get everything ready for you. See you soon. No idea if Pete or John was genuinely ill or just trying to lure me to his house. Never been to the address he sent me, and never responded to him or heard from him since. I didn't reply to him, and that was the last I heard from the guy. So yeah, that's the story. Not tremendously exciting, but kind of had a big impact on me during those years. Hope you all enjoyed. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 462. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Haven't done this for a while, and shame on me, because I used to like to do that. I just want to say thank you very much to all the new subscribers I've gotten recently. There aren't very many of you, and a lot of you seem to keep leaving. But for those of you who have chosen to stay, thank you very much for choosing to click on that subscribe button. I very much appreciate it. And also big thanks and hugs and kisses. Well, respectful handshakes. If you want a hug or a kiss, let me know. Respectful handshakes and gentle punches on the arm, for those who want them. To those of you who have decided to stick with me over the years, we recently passed 71,000. That's quite a good milestone. 29,000 to go, and I hit my years-long goal of 100,000. I can get me that silver play button, which, to be honest with you, I don't even think I want now, but I still want the 100,000. I secretly still want the plaque, though. I just convince myself I don't sometimes. People are weird like that. If you did like and do like the videos in general, when you watch them, if you could remember to give a little bit of a thumbs up, that is very helpful to me. I don't think I stress often enough just how helpful a thumbs up is to a YouTuber. Be it a thumbs up or a comment, that all counts as interaction with the video, which actually helps get the video more attention when it comes to the way the algorithm works. So that's basically why YouTubers are constantly reminding you to like their videos. The subscribe thing, personally, I don't get, because I think if someone wants to subscribe to your channel, they're gonna do it. Constantly banging on about it isn't gonna help, but likes are super helpful. Super duper pooper helpful. A productive day today. Managed to get everything I needed to do done before the weather got too weathery. Also got a good deal on the West Wing box set, which means I actually now have the full, complete box set. I got that for £6. Really good deal. Used, obviously. And I also now, unfortunately, have seasons 1, 3, and 7. Because I'd bought those from the same place, look really cheap. But it's altogether, that's still less than it would have been to buy a new copy. I do like my West Wing. Okay, I think that's quite enough rambling for me. I should probably head off now. I also must stop getting easily distracted when I'm making videos. I stopped in the middle of this to do a bit of photo editing, which could probably have waited until I was done. But I do like a good challenge. I'm kind of a hobby of mine to restore like damaged pictures. The more damaged, the better. Faded, it's quite fun to try and bring them back, that sort of thing. If there's missing parts of it, that can be a bit of a challenge. I'm rambling again, sorry. Okay, I'm definitely going now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.